Alright, the second part of the Chaturthamsa is what are the important things to look at. Okay? Like the Hor, like the Drakana, like the Rashi, we need to look at everything in this Varga. But what's the foundation things we have to look at? Well, the most important planet is Mercury. Interesting enough, because we know that Chaturthamsa is for our bhagya, our portion, our share in life, that equates to our fortune. Mercury's presiding deity is Vishnu, and Vishnu is considered to be the absolute aspect of God who's manifested himself as everything in creation. So whatever you have in life, what you have is Vishnu. Okay? So really what determines your share is Vishnu, which is Mercury. Okay? So Mercury is the most important planet. If Mercury is strong in Shadbala, has good Lajitati of Ashtas, right away you're just going to have more fortune in life, which means you're going to have more things in life that are innate to yourself, that you've always had, that bring happiness, that are always new and interesting, and that last forever. You're going to have more fortune the minute Mercury's in good condition. So you want a good Mercury in this Varga. If Mercury's bad, everything in this Varga will be less. Okay, you want a good solid Mercury there. Okay, important Bhavas. Well, we'll pretend the line is here. Obviously, the fourth Bhava is the key Bhava, because this Bhava is the fourth house in the Chaturthamsa. So this shows the fortune we can have as real estate, which is the most fortunate thing to own. It also shows the fortune of extra money and wealth that we can have stored away in banks. The fourth house rules banks and treasure chests and places where money is stored. So a good fourth Varga house in the Chaturthamsa gives us lots of extra money, lots of extra wealth. You know, the Hora can give us wealth to fulfill all of our obligations. But when it comes to like taking that and storing it, the fourth house in the Chaturthamsa is important. All that extra money, okay, that really makes us feel lucky with our finances. One of the other things that this Varga is for is portions, shares, which is stocks, right? Because stocks, what is the stock market? You get shares, right? So this Varga also has to do with shares. And one of the things that this Varga has to do with in stocks is ever new. They're always changing, right? And Mercury, of course, is the planet that represents investments and speculations. So the Chaturthamsa is an important Varga to use if you're trying to, work with clients about, making money in the stock market. Okay? And if they're able to bank that money, this fourth house is important. But it's not the most important house for the stock market, okay? But Mercury is a critical planet for that. People who've got a good Mercury in this chart have a better chance of making money through stocks and investments, okay? Through dealing in shares of any type. Alright, so that's the important Bhava there. The secondary important Bhava is the first. Why? When we take all the numbers in 4, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, we get 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. So the first Bhava is a critical Bhava in the Chaturthamsa. Because you're fortunate to have a body, right? Especially spiritually speaking. It doesn't matter how bad your body, how ugly you are, how bad it works, whether you were born paraplegic or whatever, where you were born diseased and have always had disease. It's considered fortunate to have a body because that body allows you to burn the karma that once burned gives you everlasting, ever new consciousness of bliss, etc., which gives you the Sanat Kumaras, the Lord's eternal bliss, God's eternal bliss. So, by having a body, we're able to process and work through the things that we need to work through in order to have that bliss of true fortune. So the first Bhava is important. And of course, if we have a great body and a healthy body and an attractive body, right away we're more fortunate in life. Right? If you're healthy, you can make better use of everything in your life. If you're attractive, you tend to have a little easier time with things in life. Okay? A good body is a great piece of fortune. It's a huge aspect of fortune. And since the Lagna is important in every Varga, this is a very important Bhava in the Chaturthamsa. Okay? And you're going to see that all the important Bhavas in the Chaturthamsa are actually really important. Okay, when we take the critical Bhava, the primary Bhava of the Chaturthamsa, which is number 4, because it's the 4th Varga, and we square it, we get 4 times 4 equals 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Therefore, the 7th Bhava is the other very important Bhava in the Chaturthamsa. Additionally, the 7th is the 4th from the 4th. So it becomes doubly important, just like the Lagna becomes doubly important. So in the Chaturthamsa, all 3 of these Bhavas are really, really important. Okay? So the 7th Bhava. This represents the fortune of interchange with other people through trade or marriage, as well as the interchange with the public, all of which can make us fortunate. If we have a great marriage, or a great spouse, or great partner, that's such a fortunate thing to have, right? And with a bad partner, or no partner, that's a huge deficit in our fortune. Okay? Then the 7th also has to do with business or trade. It's the house of trade and commerce in Vedic astrology. Western astrology tries to use the 3rd house. It doesn't really work. Sure, 3rd house is coming up with advertising schemes and being competitive with your other, competitive with other people who make the same products as you do. And because we live in a very competitive capitalistic society, maybe that's why Western astrologers use the 3rd house for business. But business, the actual transaction of buying and selling, is the 7th Bhava, which means this is also the Bhava of trading. So when it comes to making investments, selling stocks, being a stockbroker, it's Mercury in the 7th Bhava in the Chaturthamsa that's really important to look at. You got a terrible 7th Bhava and 7th Lord in the Chaturthamsa, you're just not going to be able to make a lot of money in the stock market. You won't have the fortune of trade or the fortune of buying and selling. So the things that we can be really fortunate in, we can be fortunate with the public, which makes us famous, right? We can be fortunate in business or trade, or we can be fortunate in marriage. And those are 3 huge aspects of fortune, all of which are represented by this 7th Bhava in the Chaturthamsa. So we cannot ignore that Bhava either. 1, 4, 7, 10, all very, very important Bhavas here. So, we have to study Mercury, and then these 3 Bhavas, and then we get a judge of the person's level of fortune. Okay? Their capacity for fortune. And if that's high, then they can be pretty fortunate in everything they touch. Meaning everything in touch will either be lasting, something that they innately have that they can run with and make something of, that they can make productive, something that's always interesting, or something which gives a lot of happiness, depending which Chaturthamsa deity is ruling that planet. Okay, but in either case, they'll be fortunate with that thing. Bad, when these are bad in the Chaturthamsa, it just means the person has a big lack in that thing. It doesn't automatically mean that thing is going to be a terror in their life. It more means they just don't have the fortune of that thing. Because this is a chart of fortune. It's not like the Trimsamsa, the 30th Varga. The Trimsamsa is the Varga of arishtas, which means fatalities and sufferings. It's the Varga of all the bad stuff you really have to suffer. The 4th Varga, though, is the Varga of Bhagya, fortune. So it represents, like if we draw the line, here's the line of nothing. Okay? It represents how much good we got. So look at Mercury. Say Mercury is this good. You get this much Bhagya fortune. This is 100% up here. Say the 4th house is that good. Well, we only can have that much fortune then. But maybe we can have a little more fortune through trade if the 7th house is like that. And say the 1st house is like this. Well, we have a real fortunate body. So, if the 4th house is totally trashed, we still have a body, right? Just that body is very minimal in what it's able to do and how much fortune it can create for us. But we still have it. It doesn't disappear, right? If our fourth house is bad, totally dead, totally trashed, bad lajitare bashta, debilitated, no friends at all, we still have a place to live. We still live where we are. That's the land we're meant to have. That's the real estate we're on, is what we're on, right? It's not like we're all of a sudden we get turned out into outer space and there's no ground beneath our feet, right? Okay? So, this Varga always has to do with, the bottom line is zero. You don't have any fortune. You don't have negative fortune. You know what I mean? Okay. So the better the planets are, the more fortune you have. So you want these planets strong so you have good stuff in life. That's a true source of happiness in your existence. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention. Okay, along the lines of real estate. Real estate's an important planet or thing in the Chaturthamsa. The planet that represents real estate is Mars. But you need to look at Mercury in that, because if Mercury's in bad shape, you're not going to really have the fortune to really prosper in real estate. Even if Mars is good, you got to look at the foundation of the chart first, which includes Mercury. So, real estate is of two types. That which you own and that which you don't own, right? That which you own means you have equity on the property, and if you really own it, you've paid the whole property off. That which you don't own is that which you have a loan on. Okay? You're really not fortunate living in a house that you have a loan on, right? That's really not fortune. Okay? You're just trying to fulfill your responsibilities of paying off that loan so you have a place to live in. Okay? The Chaturthamsa, when good, gives real estate and property that we actually own, that's actually paid for, or which will actually one day get paid for. Lots of people go through life living in many different houses that they own, but really which the bank owns, and they never ever actually own any property. And sometimes they might have a little equity. Lots of times they never make money on it at all. So we all have a place to live, whether we buy it and rent it from the bank for 10 years and then sell it and give the bank all of our money, or whether we rent a place. You're really not owning it then. That indicates a lack of fortune in your Chaturthamsa. When we're fortunate in the Chaturthamsa with respect to real estate, we actually have equity. We actually will own the property one day. There's a big difference between those two. One is renting a house that's in your name from the bank, or renting a house that's in someone else's name, or actually owning a property. A good Chaturthamsa lets you actually own the land, right? Big difference there. It's really not that fortunate to have a mortgage where you end up paying twice as much for the property, right? It's fortunate when you own the land, when it's free and clear in your name. And so, that's not so common. You'll see people have got really good Chaturthamsas. They actually manage to own their land, to own property, maybe several properties that are paid and clear where they're not paying rent on it, or paying a mortgage on it. Okay? So, this chart has to do with the equity in your home, which is the part of the home that you're fortunate in, that you actually own. So keep that in mind when you look at this chart. If a person may get a house because it's coming up in this chart, but the planet giving the house may be weak, or the fourth house may be weak, but they still own the house, meaning on paper, but they don't have equity in it, or they have huge payments, and it's really not theirs. That can indicate that kind of house. Whereas a good fourth house in the Chaturthamsa represents property that we actually own, and big, a huge equity in it that we own. Okay? Otherwise, it's more a Hora chart home, a fourth house in the Hora chart, just real estate that helps us manage our finances a little bit better because we pay the same much rent as owning a house, and it just helps us manage our finances a little bit better, and we got more tax deductions and so on and so on. Okay? So keep that in mind when you look at real estate. A great Chaturthamsa gives real estate that we actually own. That's fortunate. It's not a mark of fortune to have real estate you don't own. The equity in your real estate is a fortunate thing and will be shown in the Chaturthamsa.